back to Frederick Advice Givers, episode 141. I'm Eric Verdi, sitting here with Garrett Chambers with Cushwa Brewing, here just outside of Hagerstown, right?
We are. We're in Williamsport.
I guess we're officially in Williamsport,
Yep.
but we're just outside of Hagerstown. Yep. Awesome facility here. He's got 8, 9, how many?
We've got 7 fermenters, and then the rest are production.
7 fermenters in the back. So Cushwa is a fairly new company. Mm-hmm. You've been around 15, 16 months?
Yeah, we opened about 15 months ago.
Awesome. All right, Garrett, before we start talking about Cushwa, I want to learn about you and your backstory. Where did you grow up? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time? What did you do before you and your partner started Cushwa?
That's a long-winded answer.
That's fine.
The 3 of us are all from close by here. Scott and Marcus are from Greencastle, and I went to Boonesboro High, so about 20 minutes away. I was born and raised here. My parents weren't from here. They worked in DC. We traveled a lot. So I kind of had this like country/city upbringing. I graduated from Boonesboro. Actually, I graduated from Tech High through their auto mechanics program. Okay. That kept me in school. And after that, I took a year off. I worked on cars, went to college, got an undergrad in finance. I worked in the investment industry for 5 or 6 years in Houston. Moved back home after my dad passed away, started teaching Spanish, and then I got a master's in school counseling, and I did that for a while. And then we moved to Vermont, and I was living in Vermont. Prior to moving to Vermont, I was getting pretty heavy.
Are you a skier? You moved to, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, skier, backpacker, spend a lot of time outside. So Vermont's a perfect state for that.
Right.
So when I moved to Vermont, I was a school counselor during the day, and I worked in a brewery at night.
Okay.
And that's really my side, what kind of ignited the passion to start my own place.
So whose light bulb went off between you and your partner and said, hey, we should do this?
It's them. It's totally them. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew these guys prior?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we were friends. We actually met through craft beer.
Okay.
We were drinking buddies, basically. It's funny, though, because we never actually brewed beer together. Scott and Marcus brewed together, but I never brewed with them. So we did our own thing separately.
Right.
I don't know why. It never worked out. Yeah, so while I was up there, a lot of people who are into beer, get to drinking and say, we should open a brewery. And then you realize why that's not a good idea, because there's 1,000,001 things.
Right.
That, it's a pain in the ass. But it's awesome at the same time. So they called me one night, and the town of Williamsport actually brought Kevin Addix up to have a discussion with people that might be interested in opening a brewery. He's the president of Brewers Association of Maryland.
Okay.
So they were actually looking for a brewery to come to town. For quite a few reasons. Breweries are good for local economies. And so they left that meeting, and on the way home, they just so happened to drive past this location. So they called me after that, and they were like, we went to this meeting, we're going to do this. We found the location and all these things. And I was like, I don't think so. I wasn't really signed on at that point. So we had some back and forth for a few months. And honestly, it came down to crunch time, because they were definitely doing it, and gave me a deadline of Monday morning at 8 o'clock. You got to tell us. And I waited until 8 o'clock Monday morning. And actually, I made the decision to do this that morning when I woke up, because I wasn't totally sure that I wanted to come back here. I love Vermont.
So you were still in Vermont at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Vermont is one of my favorite places. So it was hard to leave Vermont as much as it was hard to jump into this too.
Okay.
Yeah. So they get the credit for that part.
So why this location in Williamsport? Let's talk about that for a second.
I think a couple of reasons. One, in Washington County, we've got Hagerstown, and we've got all these little towns that are attached. Like you said,
Right.
We're basically attached to Hagerstown, but each one of those towns has its own personality. Mm-hmm. And Williamsport's just a cool little town. It's got a lot of historic stuff. I definitely think it's one of the next towns to move up and really invest in the community and see some positive change. So it's, from a business perspective, it's good to not only attach yourself, but to be a driver of that. Okay. The rent here was great. Mr. Bowman, the people, Bowman Company, they have been fantastic to deal with. They worked with us on terms. As a new company, it was really important for us to keep our overhead as low as possible. Right. And they helped us out with different terms that made this it was almost like we couldn't turn this spot down. This was an old restaurant, and I think it's a tough location for a restaurant, but it's perfect for a brewery, because we need an industrial space to do what we do.
Right.
And this works out well for that.
Well, and you said you're not a restaurant.
No.
You do serve some food, and sometimes you have food trucks come to your facility. In restaurants, you need to be in high traffic areas.
Sure.
I think, like in Frederick, we have the Milk House Brewery, and that's out on Dollyhide Road in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin is brewmaster. What do you guys call yourself?
Head brewer. Okay. So Tired Hands has a shirt that says "No brewmasters, no brew gods," and like that brewmaster title kind of like puts people on a pedestal. So like head brewer, yeah, okay. Just the guy that makes the beer.
So he's a brewer there. It's out in the middle of nowhere, but they have phenomenal success because it's a destination place.
Yeah.
So, like where you are now, it's not in the middle of downtown Hagerstown or middle of downtown Frederick like the brew pub is in Frederick. So you're more of a destination spot. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, and we're strategically, as far as like traffic goes, we're basically right on the corner of 70 and 81, and we get a ton of people coming off the highway that are, they're traveling, and people obviously with smartphones just pull things up and go local brewery, and like we're here.
Right.
We've got one other brewery in Washington County, but outside of that, like Frederick's a half an hour, Winchester's a half an hour, Chambersburg's a half an hour. So there's not a lot around us. Right. So yeah. Cool.
All right. So take this back to a personal level. What's the last purchase that you splurged on for yourself or your family or your?
It sounds ridiculous, but like a really kick-ass stereo for my truck.
Awesome.
So I had a car that got totaled. I wasn't driving it. It was parked out front of the house, but my car got totaled, and I usually have a truck and a car because doing what we do, we need a truck, and I didn't have a truck. So after that, I bought a used truck, and the radio in it was trash, and music drives me. So like I haven't had a nice stereo for a really long time. I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like, I'm going to go dump some money into this. So as silly as that sounds, it's awesome. And I like can't stop smiling about it. It's really cool to have that.
Very cool. So music, you like music.
Yeah.
You run. You mentioned you run and you drink, or you drink and you run. I'm not sure what you do first, right? So what hobby or interest could you spend hours doing, Garrett?
It would be hard to pick one. I could run for hours. I could eat for hours. Like we're running, eating, drinking, traveling. It's funny when you ask about the purchase, because I don't have a lot of stuff. I'm not a stuff person. So it's easy to figure that out. I spend all of my money on experiential stuff, those things.
Right.
That's just where I place value, but definitely just being outside, backpacking. Like I love throwing a pack on and going into the woods for a week and being by myself.
Do you hunt too?
I grew up hunting, but I don't hunt right now, and which is I've actually thought about getting back into it because I have a son that's 8 and I don't think he's ready yet, but I think that's a skill that I want him to have.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And is your son local here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. So Garrett, when you wake up in the morning, like what's your why? Like what drives you to come here and brew every day? Because you're brewing you're doing something every day, right? You're producing.
We work our butts off here, right. Which is funny. When you guys came in, we're always moving at 100 miles an hour. So you guys came in, and we're just finishing kegging, and now Brady's cleaning, and we're constantly doing something. So it's for me like switching gears and doing this, which is awesome. But we're always on go.
So what's the why? Why do you do that?
Because it's mine. It's a completely different. For me, my dad owned a small business when I was a kid. He was a construction guy and did home improvements, renovations, things like that. So I grew up doing that with him. But it wasn't mine, and I didn't really care about it. Like I would go to make money with him, but we would get up at like 3:30 in the morning or something, and that sucks when you're 15 years old. Like who the hell wants to get up at 15 or at 3:30 in the morning? So now that we own this, it's a different story. When you're working for someone, somebody told me once that when you work for someone, you work just hard enough not to get fired, and they pay you just enough so you don't quit.
Right.
you know, and like, so you're stuck in that weird like limbo. And then when you work for yourself, or or you work for somebody else and you're incentivized where your, you know, production matters, it drives you because it's on you. There's no next level. You know, the buck stops here. Like,
Right.
you answer the questions. You're responsible for the thing that you turn out. So I'm a perfectionist, and if I'm not working, I'm reading about brewing or having conversations about it, and always trying to get better.
Okay. Cool. You've only, well, not only, but you've been open for 15, 16 months, but you've always kind of taken a different path. You know, you did auto mechanics. You were a Spanish teacher. You've had different paths in your life. What's one piece of advice that you could give a fellow business owner or entrepreneur? And it could have been something you learned back being right out of high school.
Yeah. Find a way to keep things interesting, because it does, even though I have the passion that I have for this place, there are some mornings where you wake up and it's kind of time to make the donuts. You know, you go in and you make the beer and you make the beer and you keg the beer and you clean the fermenter and you do this thing. So like, find ways to keep your day interesting, you know, as again, as silly as it sounds. You guys were jamming out to some
pretty loud music when I walked in here.
Right. Well, and on any given day, and that's why we had James Brown on earlier. You know, that could easily have been Tool, or it could have been, you know, old school hip hop, or, you know, it could have been any number of things. And like today, Brady got here before I did, and he's like, I was just feeling it. Like, good, that's what we go with. You know,
awesome.
Turn it on loud and move.
So what's a bad piece of advice maybe somebody gave you when you guys started out that hasn't worked out like they thought it would?
The whole line, like, I'll sleep when I die. I think a lot of people that start businesses and work for themselves, or have high stress jobs, have this mentality that they'll put sleep off, they'll put rest off. They've just got to continue to move and move and move. And I think at some point that eats you up. You know, when we, for our first 8 to 9 months, you know, we were working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. And I have a hammock upstairs. Like, we literally slept here sometimes, like, or we would go home, shower, sleep for 2 hours and come back. And eventually you burn out, and it prevents you from being the best you that you can be. So like, make sure that you schedule in time to sleep, time to spend with your family, time to, you know, go do nothing for a day, because I think that makes you better at what you do.
Cool. So in the last 3 years, what's the pivotal moment that led us to sitting here, led you to owning a business, a brewery? What was that moment? I know you said 7:59 on that Monday morning. You made the call, but there had to be something that triggered that event for you to come back here, to move back from Vermont, to partner with your buddies to open Cushwa.
For me, it's I regret more things that I don't do than things that I actually do. So like, thinking about being, you know, 60, 65, 70 one day, and having gone through life working for other people and doing some of the things that I've even though I like those things, I don't want to have given up this opportunity and look back and think, damn, like, what would my life be like had I taken that path? So for me, I think it's just...
So it's more mental about, hey, totally. I don't want to 20 years look back and say, oh, I didn't do this, or I didn't do this, or I went down this path, and you want to kind of live your own life.
I think so. I'd rather do this and fail at it. You know, not that I want to fail, but know that I put everything I could into it and take the chance of failing, rather than wonder what it would have been like if I did.
Cool. All right, so you're episode 141. I've sat across the microphone from 140 different guests. I get to ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I get to learn stuff about you. I get to learn stuff about business. I get to learn stuff about brewing. I'm gonna follow up and go on a little tangent here after this to find out more specifically about what you do.
Yeah.
But I want to flip the script. I want you to ask me a question, maybe something you want to know or anything.
Yeah. I'm curious, having talked to that many people, maybe like who was one of the most interesting people you talked to, or what's the best piece of advice that you've heard that resonated with you?
Great. you know what? Everybody on their own level is interesting.
Sure.
Okay. What I've found interviewing 141 now is that people that are successful, okay, because I started this 3 years ago. There's some people that I interviewed in the beginning that aren't doing what they were doing at the time.
Yeah.
You know, this has failed, or life happened, or something. You know, something happened. When I can sit across from somebody and I can feel their passion for what they do, and their why is not about I can make $1 million or whatever. You know, that's not their why.
Right.
When their why is they don't mind working 80 hours a week
Right.
and sleeping in a hammock upstairs because they're driven. It's, you know, if you had a baseline of all 141 interviews, it's pretty interesting. I've never really sat here and thought about it until now when you ask that question, that when people are doing it for the right reasons and it's pure and it's the passion, those are the ones that are successful. And why, you know, and their why is not money. So good question.
Yeah.
Good question. And yeah, like I said, everybody, you know, there's been a couple interviews that stand out, that they're just larger than life personalities.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about, we're going to divert from the questions here. Tell me about the brewing process. Like, okay, so you have ingredients, and what are those ingredients? And then you start a batch, and then how long till that batch is done? And then it sits for how long? And then it ferments. And then, so tell me, give me the process.
Yeah. I mean, so there's an insane amount of beer styles, 80 to 100 probably different beer styles.
So let's talk about, okay, tell me about this IPA that we're drinking right here. What's this called?
So this is Results May Vary. It's a New England style IPA. This is kind of like part of the haze craze. There's this movement toward hazy IPAs that are juicy by use of ingredients, not because there's fruit in it. Some IPAs are fruited. This one isn't. We actually don't make any fruited IPAs, but it should be soft on the palate. This has become a thing because this style of beer is generally way less bitter than like your standard West Coast IPA. You know, there was this like space race back in the like late 90s, you know, 2000s to make those IPAs very bitter, and people were seeing how many IBUs, like bitterness units, they could cram into a beer.
Okay.
And so that was like cool at the time, and a lot of people have parted from that now, and they're drinking these less bitter, more round, soft beers. And I think that's been a big driver in some of the craft beer movement, is because they're more approachable than maybe some of those other bitter beers, because people are averse to bitter by nature.
Right.
So for this beer, this is, you know, all beer has malt, hops, yeast, water. Our grain bills are really simple usually for the most part. I think the three of us, I would speak for us, we value simplicity. Making things extra complicated, just it adds unnecessary variables, and you can get a lot out of restraint if you do it right. So this is two-row, which is malted barley, a bunch of oats, which adds to that mouthfeel, keeping it soft and almost like creamy, you know, way different than like a Pilsner that you would drink or something like that. And then like a couple specialty malts, very low, keeps it light in color. This beer has Racal hops and Denali hops in it. Racal is a hop. Because we're as small as we are, we get to experiment with a lot of different things, which is awesome because we can constantly change things. We've brewed about 150 batches of beer since we've opened, and probably 100 of those are different. Okay. You know, so we're always writing new recipes and experimenting with things. So that hop is something we haven't used before. You know, water's basic or complicated depending on, you know, what you do with it. Brewing actually is, if you think of it on a spectrum, you've got science on one side and art on the other side, and it's some mix of those. And on that continuum, you find brewers who are very scientific, like that have legit labs and spend time with microscopes and, you know, lots of different equipment.
That's probably the Miller Lite that I drink, right?
Absolutely. Right. So, and you know, it's funny because a lot of craft beer people give that stuff a hard time. And while I understand it, at the same time, to produce to produce a Miller Lite and have it taste exactly the same every time, whether you're drinking it here or in San Francisco or in Thailand, from 10 different facilities after it's been in trucks and,
Right.
on ships and all this stuff, like that is an amazing feat. Like it's absolutely amazing. So while I don't necessarily like the politics of big beer, what they do and how they do it is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So scientific,
Right.
our side, while we definitely use science, we manipulate our water through different brewing salts using chemistry. Yeast is a living thing, so there's a lot of biology involved in what we do. But because we're small and because we get to do the stuff that we do, I like to think that we are more maybe along the artsy path of it.
So how long did it take to produce this batch?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is that what it's called, a batch?
Yeah,
Okay.
this batch. So a brew day for us is about 8 hours from start to finish. But then time from like grain to glass, 21 days, 18 to 21 days are our standard turn times in our brewery. Now you've got beer that you can produce in a shorter time frame than that. And then some that take, a very long time. Lagers, can take 1 to 2 months or more, depending on what you're brewing and how, your process. And then you've got sour beers that take 2 years. So it's very style dependent. It's very equipment driven, things like that.
And how much is in a batch?
So we're on a 3.5 barrel system, which actually makes us one of the smallest breweries in the state.
Okay.
A barrel's 31 gallons, so we're doing about 108 gallons at a time.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love the behind the scenes of actually how to brew, and hopefully during this interview, Rock's gotten some B-roll back here, so you guys are seeing the vats and everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool facility you have here.
Thank you. We built this. We built, and that's something too. Like we built this place ourselves. Like we did this with our money. We didn't take out loans. We don't have investors. We did every bit of work in here ourselves that we were legally allowed to do.
Right.
Minus getting some like electrical and plumbing help to tie things in. But that's another point of pride for us. That's something that it's literally blood, sweat, and tears. Like there have been all three in here.
Right.
So
on a small business there is, man.
Yeah.
So what failure or loss has helped mold you? Could be personal, could be business, to the man you are today. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm a brewer and I'm a partner. It could be I'm a father and I'm a whatever, son.
Yeah. Probably my dad dying. So he died about 12 years ago, and we have like heart problems in the family. So this one's emotional. We lost him unexpectedly, and I think for me, it was a wake-up call. Take care of myself, like make better life choices, and really try to get the things that I want done early, because you never know.
Right.
Like you just never know what's coming.
Is that why you run?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a lot of it. Just trying to stay healthy, eat well. Some of it's genes, and you can't outrun genes.
Right.
You can't out eat genes, but you can do things like sleep and take care of yourself. And being a father, I want to be around for him too. So
it's a different perspective when you're a father, isn't it?
What is, you have a small person that depends on you to be there. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's, while losing my dad was very sad, it's also a thing that, is constantly around, and you go, got to make the best of what you got.
You got brothers, sisters?
I don't. I'm an only child. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. And I can imagine, you said you grew up, your dad had a small business, working with him in the construction field. I empathize with you. My dad, we have a horse farm down where I grew up, and I have those same memories, working with my dad, getting up in the middle of the night to help foal a horse.
Yeah.
So hang on to those memories, man. I know your dad's proud of what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So Garrett, where do you see yourself in 3 years and then in 10 years? And it could be you or it could be the company now. You're partners.
Yeah. Honestly, I hope to always be involved in this. I don't think that any of us. There are different motivations for starting businesses. Some people start businesses because they love it and they always want to be a part of it. Some people start them to grow them and sell them off in 5 or 10 or whatever their plan is, and fund a retirement or another business or a thing that they want to do. Like I honestly hope that we never outgrow. I hope that we never get so big that we're not connected to this. I always want to be able to walk into my business and do every job that's here. I want to be able to come in and brew. I want to be able to serve in the tap room. I don't want to ever be so disconnected from it that I don't really know what the hell's going on. So hopefully still very involved. By 10 years out, hopefully we've got more free time and we're traveling a little more and like doing some cool stuff. That would put my son right out of high school, and hopefully, we're on a plane going somewhere.
Awesome.
So,
because you said you live for experience.
We do. Yeah, we travel a lot.
All right, Garrett. So this is your 30 second to a minute. Like, where are we? How do people get a hold of you? I see you have bands that play here.
Sure.
Like, give us a background of what you do here.
Yeah. So we are Cushwa Brewing Company. We are hopefully a staple in the community. You can find us on the internet at cushwabrewing.com. Marcus, Scott, and I, we all have our email addresses there. That's the best way. We actually don't have a brewery phone. Occasionally we get people asking questions about that, just emailing us or through social media. We've got standard Instagram, Facebook, Twitter accounts. Marcus monitors our social media. He watches it like a hawk. We're all really responsive. We like interacting with people. Right. That's one of the cool things about doing what we do, is that we get the chance to do stuff like this. And we get emails from people that want to start breweries and have questions, and we sit down with them. This industry is cool in that way. Like, we all kind of help each other and work together. We are about 30 minutes west of Frederick. Up 70, and we're Williamsport's a canal town, so our brewery is not on the Potomac, but it's right there.
We're right off of 11 too, aren't we? Are we right off of 11?
Yeah, that runs right through Williamsport.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're on Governor Lane Boulevard, in an industrial complex. Yeah.
So you have bands? How often?
Two or three times a month. We have bands. We try to get live music in. We try to work with local artists. We love people that have original content. Initially, we tried really hard to find that, and we've been really lucky to find some cool people that do write their own stuff. I know that's very challenging for people that do that as a side gig, because it's hard to have total original content. Yep. But we've gotten some really cool bands in. We do all kinds of things with the community. We serve kombucha that's made from a company called Cultured Leaf in Shepherdstown. She comes out, her and her husband come out on Saturdays and do growler fills of that. We've had various other businesses come in to show off things that they do. So we try to tie ourselves into the community as much as possible.
And what are your hours?
So Wednesday and Thursday, 4 to 9. Friday 3 to 11, Saturday noon to 11, and Sunday 12 to 6.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Garrett, I appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, man.
Listeners, viewers, Frederick Advice Givers, episode 141, Garrett Chambers, Cushwa Brewing, Williamsport, right off of literally 70 and 81. You're about 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Right, 2-3 minutes off of 70.
Definitely. We're the last exit off of 81 before you cross the river and go to West Virginia.
Awesome. Come check it out. Weekends, come hang out. Weekdays, come hang out. Whenever. They're open evenings and weekends. And we are out.